the constitutional crisis is now. The vice president of the United States of America, a lawyer who knows constitutional law, he's saying that the president can ignore the judiciary, that the president is freed from the constraints of checks and balances. That is an authoritarian takeover. That is a constitutional crisis. It's a lot happening in Washington, D.C. Right now. So one of them is, the Doge gang has their sights on Social Security. The landing team is already there. The person who Trump proposed to be in charge of the Social Security Administration has said he's a Doge guy. And, it's just a matter of time before they show up with their servers, plug it into the system, and just steal all of our Social Security data on every person in this country. And that's not their end goal, right? They're coming after our benefits, Tom. You know that. So we were able to, in very short order, gather a few hundred people, both senators from Maryland, most of the Maryland Congressional Caucus, delegation, and get in front of the Social Security Administration building up there in Woodlawn with one message for Elon Musk: hands off our Social Security, hands off our Medicare, hands off our Medicaid. He's going to have to come through the American people if he wants to steal our Social Security benefits.
So what evidence do we have that they're actually looking at this? We know that they want to, that Trump wants to do another multi-trillion-dollar tax cut for billionaires. We know that they're not going to be able to get the debt ceiling raised, or at least it's unlikely, and that Democrats aren't going to help them on this. And so the only way they can pass this tax cut is through reconciliation, which can pass the House and Senate with a simple majority, but reconciliation says you may not raise the deficit. So they've got to come up with a couple of $1 trillion in government spending that they can get rid of to pay for this tax cut for billionaires. Do we have any evidence that they're specifically looking at these three programs?
Absolutely. You have to actually look at the totality of what's going on, but very clearly $2.3 trillion in Medicaid cuts, which is simply the destruction of Medicaid to pay for. I always put that in air quotes because it's just ludicrous to call reaching into one person's pockets, taking their money and giving it to the billionaire in the room that's paying for it. That's just stealing, Tom. But that is how Washington, D.C. works. And you can read about it. I mean, always check my work. Google it. You can Google Jeff Van Drew. You remember that coward? He switched parties to become a Republican because he didn't want to lose his power. And he's out there. He's saying, I'm nervous about the size of the Medicaid cuts. You'll read about how there is all this tension in the reconciliation package and how it's going to move forward, because they know that when the rubber hits the road, when it comes to legislation, when it comes to that tax handout, and they have to bring in Congress, that's when it becomes particularly difficult, because that's when they have to stop lying. That's when they have to say, these are the specific programs that we're going to steal from you so that Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, can afford, another golden pillow to cry about his sad life into, or whatever he spends his money on. But just to be clear, the reason it feels like they're able to do so much right now in this blitzkrieg part is because it's all done through executive action. It's all done by the White House. They haven't brought in the Congress yet. And that's why it feels so fast, and it's like nothing can stop it, because the powers of the presidency are astronomical, as you know. I mean, this man can literally destroy the world with the push of a button. He has enormous power. And he is actively eroding the checks and balances that are used to restrain that power. And since the Republicans in Congress are not standing up and saying, hey, that's the power of Congress, more and more authority is moving into the executive. But they do need to have a few things that have to happen with Congress. And once you get to Congress, it's a whole different ball game there, Tom, because in the House, they right now have a 0-person majority. After the special elections, they'll have a 3-person majority. And that caucus, the Republicans in the House, they're divided into like 5 to 7 factions that all hate each other. So we're going to have to raise our voices and defeat the reconciliation process, the attacks on Medicaid, and they have hundreds of billions of dollars in cuts to Medicare written down, but also the threat to Social Security, not just from Elon Musk, saying he's coming after Social Security. And read his Twitter right now. He keeps calling Social Security a fraud. He keeps retweeting Senator Mike Lee, who has actively called for the destruction of Social Security. I don't know, not with you, but with like establishment media, they keep, like wondering what's next in their agenda. You can just read Project 2025. They're doing it page by page. Yeah. The next thing on Social Security, create a commission so that they can get those cuts across without getting 60 votes in the Senate. But I am confident that, the rage that I'm feeling building is very real. No one voted to cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. So we are going to stand up now.
Yeah, that's absolutely remarkable. What do you think the odds are that, I understand the government funds basically run out on March 14th. What do you think the chances of a government shutdown are? That the Republicans will not be able to raise the debt ceiling, and that this time the Democrats aren't going to help them out?
What I would put a bunch of money on is that the Republicans won't be able to gather the votes in the House alone. They obviously can't do it in the Senate. But what happened all last Congress, if you remember, is, the Freedom Caucus would be like, their proposal would be like, literally go door to door and punch every person in the face. And then they would put that to a vote, and then the Freedom Caucus themselves wouldn't even vote for it, right? They could never get anything across the line. And so then they'd go to the Democrats. And in fact, the Democrats are like, well, we're not voting for that. We'll vote for our thing. And then the Democrats would pass, a spending package or a budget or whatever that was much more the Democrats' priorities than the Republicans. So it's going to be somewhere like that. It's not, they control both houses now, the House and the Senate. So, it's not going to be, it's not going to result in good things. But the Democrats have enormous leverage at these key moments, and they have to use it. And we have to demand that they use it, because I'm sick and tired of too many people in this town, Tom. They keep talking about things in a future tense, like what may happen, the constitutional crisis that's coming. And you're like, the constitutional crisis is now. The vice president of the United States of America, a lawyer, who knows constitutional law, he's saying that the president can ignore the judiciary, that the president is freed from the constraints of checks and balances. That is an authoritarian takeover. That is a constitutional crisis, and we need everyone to take it that seriously. At the same time, Tom, politicians aren't going to save us, right? The courts aren't going to save us either. The only thing that can stop a tyrant and the tyranny that he's bringing is the people. And so until the people are out in force, raising our voices together and really shutting things down, I don't think we're going to see as much bravery as we need. The politicians are lagging indicators. They get their bravery from the people. But first, the people have to organize and fight back. And that's where the fire, the bravery, and the opposition that we need is going to come from.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders once made the point to me that the way politicians work is they typically don't get out in front with a flag and say, hey, let's organize a parade. Instead, they wait for a parade to naturally form, and when it's big enough and vital enough and active enough, then they jump in front of it with a flag and say, this is my parade. And so it's up to us to create that parade, essentially. So tell us, what resources are over at socialsecurityworks.org, or where you recommend people go to learn how to become part of that parade.
Definitely, and I'll just add one thing that I learned from Marion Barry, the mayor for life from Washington, D.C., who is also MLK's left hand in the civil rights fight. He told me that the left often suffers from when the politicians want to join the parade, the left is like, no, you get out of here. You weren't with us the whole time. And we can't do that. We have to actually be like, oh, great, wonderful. You're all welcome. We'll just even pretend you were here the whole time because that's how we build power. We invite people in. So if you go to socialsecurityworks.org, you follow us on social media, the pledge campaign that we're running right now, we're demanding every member of Congress pledge no cuts to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and we're running billboard trucks in every vulnerable toss-up Republican district where they don't take the pledge, because at any one time, we only need 3 Republicans to stop this assault on our democracy and this theft of our earned benefits.
And there's like, what, 17 Republicans who are in that category?
Yes, just in the Cook Report toss-up. And then, you know, there's lean Republican, but these are extremely tight races where these guys are, you know, their political future right now is very uncertain. That's why I brought up Jeff Van Drew. You know, these are people who are saying you can't cut and destroy Medicaid. Like, I'll definitely lose my job. That's the calculus that we have to make. We work with that. We need these members to be more afraid of losing their jobs to their constituents' anger than they are of Donald Trump and, you know, the wrath that he can bring on Twitter.
Right, or Elon Musk's money. Well said, Alex. Well said. Alex Lawson, the president of Social Security Works, socialsecurityworks.org, strengthensocialsecurity.org, socialsecurityworks.org over on Blue Sky. Alex, thanks again. Keep up the great work, my friend.
Thanks, Tom.
Always great talking with you. We'll be right back.